Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to our Employer Relations in Handshake webinar. Excited to have you here. Hope you're having a nice day so far. We're going to give folks another minute to get joined up, and then we will go ahead and get started. But in the interim, if you've joined a webinar with me before, you know I like to do an audio and visual check. So if you can hear the dulcet tones of my voice, and if you can see the lovely slide, could you please jump into the Q&A panel and give us a quick hello? Would be greatly appreciated. Thank you all. And just to call it out, I did turn off the chat. That was not because I didn't want to hear from you all, just because we want to keep conversations happening in the Q&A panel where it's a little bit easier to moderate. So thank you to everyone who said hi in the chat. And I did not mean to shut down your conversation. We're excited to have you here. Awesome. Excellent. Okay. I'd say we've got a quorum, so let's go ahead and get started. If you're just joining us, happy Wednesday. Welcome to our Employer Relations and Handshake webinar. We're excited to have you here. If we could jump to the next slide. I mentioned this before, but we have everyone on automatic mute this morning. I did remove the chat, and we're going to ask people to please submit questions and comments through the Q&A panel in Zoom. We definitely want to hear from you throughout today's webinar. We're going to answer questions that you submit via the Q&A panel throughout today's presentation, and then we'll leave some time at the end to talk through some of the questions verbally, especially if they are addressed to our guest speakers, who I'll introduce in a minute. And if we don't get to your question, please absolutely feel free to reach out to your relationship manager. They'll be happy to help you get an answer. And then finally, one of our most frequently asked questions is, will this webinar be recorded? The answer is yes, we are recording this webinar, and you will get an email tomorrow with a recording, along with a couple of other follow-up resources that you can check out. And that email is going to go to everybody who registered for this webinar. So if you have a colleague who registered but couldn't make it, they will get a recording tomorrow as well. So again, feel free to send in questions via the Q&A panel. We'll answer some of them along the way as we have time, and then we'll answer more at the end. Excellent. So before we get started, I also wanted to give a quick plug for our new Handshake Network Trends report, which launched yesterday. It's called Who Wins with Virtual Recruiting, and it shares insights around how higher ed and employers are thinking about planning for this fall with respect to the virtual in-person split. And then it also does a deep dive on student sentiment around engaging virtually. And on the former point, you can see on this slide that nearly all institutions and employers that responded to our survey plan to host virtual career events this fall. And I will drop the link to the report in the chat so you can check it out if you haven't yet. It's really excellent. And if we jump to the next slide, one other stat I wanted to share, just another little teaser to get you excited and wanting to check out the report. 87% of the 2,400 students who responded to our survey said they prefer some form of virtual recruiting moving forward. So a lot of what this report digs into is why virtual is so appealing for students, and why it's important for schools to consider it as kind of a standard part of your engagement offering moving forward. Okay, thank you for indulging me on that little sidebar. So here are today's speakers. That's me on the left. I'm Britt Gergen, Product Marketing Manager here at Handshake. And throughout today's presentation, we're also going to be hearing from Sam, who's a Relationship Manager at Handshake. And then our special guests, Sean and Nathan, are going to be talking to you about how their teams approach employer relations and Handshake, specifically as it relates to customer relationship management or CRM platforms. So you'll hear more from them later, but we are incredibly excited to have them here and grateful that they have given us their time to share their expertise. On the next slide, we've got a pretty straightforward agenda. We're going to start off with Sean, who's going to talk about managing employer relationships within Handshake. Then we'll pass over to Nathan, who's going to talk about integrating Handshake data with an external CRM, specifically Salesforce. Next up, I am going to jump back in to talk about a couple of product updates that are coming soon or that have just recently launched that can help you supercharge your employer relations efforts. And then, as I mentioned, we'll save plenty of time at the end for Q&A with our panel of experts. But please feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation as well, and we'll answer them as we can. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sam to kick us off.
Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm so thrilled to be here with you today and with Sean and Nathan as well. I have the direct pleasure of being their relationship manager, so really excited to have them share their insights with you. So we thought we'd kick it off just by starting with just a quick question. What is CRM and how does it relate to career services? So we're going to use that CRM term a lot today. Britt's already used it. So we want to make sure that that acronym makes sense to everyone. So CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management Platform. What CRMs do is they create a way for teams to organize, maintain, and retrieve relevant customer information in real time. So you're able to stay up to date and have a really holistic view of each individual customer that you're working with. So when we think about it in career services and higher ed, what customers do we have, right? We have students, we have employers, and in this specific setting, we're going to be talking about employers. So potentially we could even be using the acronym ERM, Employer Relationship Management. So it would be a way for you as a team to stay up to date on all things employer related. So their events, their job postings, interviews, messaging, all of the conversations that you're having on the phone and in person, outcomes and placement data. And it also allows for some cross-team information sharing. So allowing you to have a shared information set or shared data set with your central career center and your business school and your college of engineering, so that you all have this really holistic view of the relationships that are being formed between your team members and your staff and the employers that you're working with. It also allows for contact management and the ability to track alumni who are engaging in your platform, and can also help with prospecting. So I know that's a big piece of every employer relationship journey and team is who are you hoping to connect with in the future. So having a CRM in place can really help with that as well. So to start out, we would love to get a scope of, we have about 291 people here with us today. So is your team currently using a customer relationship management platform? What does it look like? You know, so either you're using one, you're using Handshake as your CRM, or you're not currently using anything for this area of focus. And then Britt, I'm not sure if you have a normal time period that you let this open for. Looks like we have about 82% of people who have voted. So
let's give it another 10 seconds.
Perfect. Let's see if we can hit 90%. We're at 86% right now. A few more could get us to 90. Awesome. There's our 90%. So the majority in this group right now is using Handshake as their CRM, but followed closely behind teams who aren't currently using a CRM, which is great. So that's what today's discussion should hopefully help you out in figuring out what a CRM solution could potentially be for your team. And then about 22%, or 1 out of 5 of you, are using an external CRM platform. So really excited to see that breakdown and how this will be impactful to all of the teams who are here today. And then with that, I am going to turn it over to Sean. So Sean is going to talk all things employer relationships and Handshake. So the team at Carnegie Mellon uses Handshake as their CRM, and really excited to hear from Sean today. So with that, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Sam, for that nice introduction. I'm excited to be here, and thank you for having us. You know, this whole conversation really stemmed with a conversation with Sam and our team, something that we had been thinking about for months and even some years of how do we manage employer contacts? How do we manage employer notes, follow-up? We had been doing it, whether it's in our own OneNote or maybe just sharing it in meetings or putting it in an Excel doc that sits on one of our shared drives that, we're really only going in when we're entering notes and reporting each year. So we wanted to figure out, how do we manage all of these contacts. Now at Carnegie Mellon, we work with hundreds, if not thousands, of employers each year, whether it's job postings or connecting with career events, or just connecting on their yearly plans. So we wanted to have a way to be able to see the whole picture. And I think Handshake has the built-in features to give us what we needed. So we met with Sam and we said some of the things that we were looking for, and Sam was able to kind of take all the ideas that we have and make some recommendations that we've been utilizing the last maybe 5 or 6 months, 4 months probably, really actively. So my name is Sean McGowan. I'm the Assistant Director for Employer Relations here at this Carnegie Mellon CPDC. Now, we are a centralized career services unit that oversees 6 of the 7 different colleges at Carnegie Mellon. One of the things that we do have, though, is we do have a career ecosystem at CMU, multiple different folks from different departments that do somewhat employer relations work, career services work, maybe some folks in advancement that have Handshake accounts. Obviously, we do have some faculty and staff that have faculty and staff accounts as well. But we wanted to be able to, that anybody that looks into Handshake at an employer, they can get an idea of what's going on. Whether I were to disappear tomorrow or our whole team were to disappear tomorrow, we would know maybe who's the point of contact, who are employers that we are working with pretty regularly. So I wanted to show you some ways that we've utilized the tools to make our system a little bit more user-friendly and also more informative to anybody at Carnegie Mellon that's utilizing the system. So we're going to talk about employer labels, assigning contacts, activity snapshot, and view and add notes. These are all features that will be available and are available to you as well currently. So we'll go start off with employer labels. So if we want to go to the next slide, awesome. So one slide back. Oh, no, we're right. We're at the right slide. Okay, my bad. So looking at labels based on levels of engagement. So people are able to create labels which categorizes specific employers into whatever you'd like that to be. Here are 2 examples of ways that we've done this. So we have what's called maintain employer. So maintain employer is an employer that recruits with us pretty heavily. Maybe they're partners, maybe they recruit year over year, very dedicated, they're regulars, frequent flyers. Those are employers that we have an amazing relationship with. Engage employers are employers that maybe want to re-engage or could require some more engagement on our part. So maybe these are employers that post 1 or 2 jobs. Maybe they attend 1 event each year. Maybe we just don't have an amazing relationship with them. Maybe they do recruit pretty frequently, but we don't know them too well. They would kind of fall in that engagement employer category. And then invite employers. These are brand new employers. Let's say we prospected, we've added some new players to the system. Maybe they've only posted a job, they're already approved. These are employers that we have labeled kind of like we want to bring them in this next year. So that would be kind of your engagement level type labels. And you can filter this again through looking at labels. So if you wanted to filter all these employers to be able to email them or just generate a list and contacts, you can do that. Another label that I want to talk about is labels based on time. So one of the ways that I've been able to help filter all the companies that I've met with, whether that's meetings in person, whether that's virtual Zoom meetings, or could be even email meetings or big emails that you've been connecting with, however you want to label these. These ones, let's say employee relations meeting 2020, these are ones that I have met through a Zoom for a scheduled meeting. It's a great way to be able to look back, be able to get the content, be able to look at, all the employers that have done that, whether I want to send an invite, let's say to an event. I talked about all of our fall events this past spring and early summer. I would go to the employer relations meeting list and say, hey, we set up a targeted email. We'd say, hello, I'd love to connect with you. I just wanted to let you know our events are now live. That would be a great way to use that label. Another way would just to be able to, if you have a partnership program. So we have platinum, gold, silver level. This could be a great way. And also if you have Pittsburgh area employers, that's what we use for region-based employers. So there's multiple different ways you can use the labels. I think using labels will help keep you organized in any fashion, no matter what type of labels you're using, but I would definitely recommend utilizing this so that you're able to filter a little bit better. So if we go on to the next slide. Yep. Yep, so I want to talk about assigning contacts. This has actually been something that has really helped us in terms of keeping everyone in the institution that has a Handshake account a little more up to date on who the point of contact is. So many of times we'll have, let's say, a university contact that's the central POC. Since we are the central career services unit, we've elected that my name would be attached to that. So any employer that has Sean McGowan attached to that employer, that's the active employer that we are working with. So if, let's say, someone changes, I would change that contact to assign to the new contact. So that way there should only be one contact that Sean McGowan is attached to. Now, sometimes there are teams of employers, teams of employer recruiters that are working together. I'll add my name to that one as well. But we do have another career services center called the Heinz College. They are also able to add their name to another contact if they have a different one, since they are a master serving population. So if the employer has a contact, has a recruiter that's focused on that type of recruiting, our colleague Kelly would put her name near that contact. So anybody who's going in will be able to see, oh, that's the point of contact. We have a group of folks that do career consulting and career advising, and a lot of the times they're sending emails. Who's our current point of contact? Who's the person I can connect with at company A, company B? This is an easy way for the folks on your team to be able to go in and see exactly who that person is. And again, if you keep this updated in real time, it'll really keep you organized and help you with that. And you can also filter by contacts. So if you wanted to filter all contacts that are assigned to me, you could do that as a filter as well, which would help you. Okay. We're going to go to the next slide here. View activity snapshot has been excellent. And I know that a lot of folks really enjoy this tool because it really does provide some of those statistics that are amazing for employers to know, or even your team to know. You know, one of the things that we do with the view activity snapshot is before every, let's say, virtual Zoom meeting that we have, we create this document based off the information like contacts, FDS, jobs posted, event attendance, reviews, and more. We can actually compile that and be able to talk to the employer and also share this with folks who may be joining in that meeting. So if you're meeting with, let's say, an employer and you have a faculty member or someone from advancement or another career advisor, you can provide this information to them or have them go on themselves and see what that activity was for the past year, so that when you're talking to that employer about their year, their past year, you sound so much more, researched. You're able to say, oh, according to our FDS, we actually saw that 4 students went to your company. They're able to confirm that or say, actually, there was a little bit more, a little less. That is a great way to kind of show that you've done your research. You came very prepared to that meeting, and it really does reflect on you and the office, and that you're really putting the time and effort to do this. It's also a great way to be able to see notes, which we'll go over in a second. So as we're putting notes in, when you do view that activity snapshot, you can also see all the notes from any previous meetings or interactions as well. So the view activity snapshot can be a super powerful tool to give you some data, and you're actually able to export this as well, or keep it open in a different tab if you're looking at it while you're talking to an employer. But I would definitely recommend, if you're not using this, hit that snapshot. And you can also filter based off years. So you can do it by specific timeframes as well. So if you want to be able to compare it from 2017 to 2018, or 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, you'll be able to do that, which can also really show that you've done that research. I'm going to move on to our last, which is the view and add notes. This is just something that I was always there, but I never put the time in to do this over 3 years. And after the last 6 months, I've really been happy that I've been keeping up with this, and we're getting others to do this as well. This is such an easy part of the process, whether you're taking notes and you in person and you transcribe them into an Excel doc. If you were going to do that anyway, you can actually put that into the notes filter. It already sets the date and time for you on the notes portion underneath. And anybody, like I said, within the organization, your school that has Handshake access, they can go and see those notes so that they can pick up where you left off. So let's say I were to leave, or if someone else, like from the Heinz College, is meeting with them, they can see, oh, they've already met with this person. They're talking about, a robotics program. We can also help connect the dots. I think that that's a great way to also put in, maybe if their recruiting plans have changed and a career advisor is looking at that employer to see, oh, are they recruiting for my types of students? What majors? things like that. Who's the person, the personal contact as well. So utilizing all of these tools is really going to keep yourself organized, but also more importantly, is going to keep your institution more organized. And especially for the folks that have that handshake access, they're not going to be emailing you every 5 seconds to say, who's that contact? Where do I find this? What have they been doing? Did you know that there's 3 different? You can actually go back very quickly with a couple clicks to be able to either filter or just pull up that activity snapshot to get everything that's been done with that employer. So, we all sat there and put different Excel documents together for a few years, when really we could have been using Handshake to do that very thing, to keep us organized. So it's been something that we've really been happy, and Sam and our team, we put together a little handout, just a 1-pager that kind of describes each of these tools, to be able to keep yourself more organized so that you can provide that impeccable service. And that's something that our employer relations team here at CMU really, really cherishes, is that we provide impeccable customer service, that we make it easy for employers. And part of that is being organized, being able to research and having that information so that we can keep the conversation going. And it's not just from starting from scratch, being able to kind of look at those next steps and take those actions. So yeah, this has really helped us out in the last few months. All right, I think we're going to throw it right back to Sam. Thank you.
Awesome. Yes. Thanks so much, Sean. I know that there are a lot of questions coming in as well, that we'll hopefully be able to focus on in the FAQs or Q&A at the end of the session, but really appreciate you kind of detailing all of those processes that your team has put in place, and also how they really have impacted your workflows and your ability to standardize a little bit more for the team at CMU. I know that a question just came in that someone's asking for your 1-pager that you were referencing. So I do believe that that's something that Britt is going to be sharing out tomorrow with the recording. We'll also include that 1-pager in there as well. But really, thank you for sharing all of that, Sean. We greatly appreciate it. And now I have the great pleasure of introducing Nathan Hunsaker from University of Virginia. Nathan is actually joining us from his vacation. So thank you so much, Nathan, for being here with us today. Nathan's going to talk a little bit about what's going on at UVA, how they've started to implement using some reporting and different pieces of Handshake to really leverage this external CRM that they're using. So Nathan, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to connect with everyone here from the beach. Today, I'm going to be talking about how we leverage Handshake data through integrations and outbound data flows, and focusing primarily on how we're assisting the employer relations side of what we do in the Career Center. There exists a real synergy between employer relations, our alumni association, and those folks in advancement who are looking for donors. Often those 3 populations are very interconnected. And the way we are looking to approach this is, one, to lower our administrative overhead in the Career Center, and leverage the advancements in Handshake that allow the data in Handshake to be shared more seamlessly outside the traditional Career Center silo. So there exists a benefit of a central CRM, is you don't have to provision an account in Handshake for every single person at the university who's interested in a small subsection of what the platform does. And also, you don't have to force your user into using a different CRM. So the way that we're approaching it is, our employer relations do their daily activity in Handshake as normal, and then we sync the data on the back end into Salesforce. If you could go to the slide for me. And our integration with Salesforce is really we look at it in two versions. So version 1.0, we started with an API feed between Handshake and Salesforce, and primarily we were supporting a internship program that we run, and we found that there are delays in getting data, and with everything, we just weren't happy with how the API was functioning. So we really have invested in trying to get our scheduled reporting up and running. So to that end, I stood up my own server to receive the scheduled report. You can send a scheduled report either to an email or to your own FTP server. So I stood up an FTP server that receives reports on our contacts, our employers, our jobs, our interviews, fairs, and events. And then the feed from Salesforce goes on to my FTP server, picks up that information, and then pulls it into Salesforce. One thing that I've really learned that I can't overemphasize is that in these integrations, it is extremely important to keep them as simple as possible. And that was one of the things we were running into with the API and with our internship placement program, is that the workflow that we were trying to support was very time sensitive, and we were making a lot of changes to accommodate this time sensitive process that was overcomplicating how we were moving our data and what we were having to do to make this process work. So I guess if anything, I learned that, you know, you have to be comfortable with a little bit of time lag, especially in scheduled reporting where the looker insights in Handshake, it takes 24 hours for your changes in Handshake to make it to that those reports. And then those reports, depending on your process, would take an additional period to make it out to whatever system you're syncing to. So make sure that you're comfortable with that level of time delay. Sam, if you could go to the next slide for me.
Sorry about that, Nathan. You should be good. Right.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry for the delay.
Oh, no worries.
Continue.
So some of the other integrations, and I wanted to bring this up because we're not just integrating data out to Salesforce, but we also do integrations out to a BI tool that we use at UVA called Click, where we recombine our Handshake data with our student information system data to build visualizations with so exterior interested parties, you know, our administration at the university and other folks around the university have access to our up-to-date KPIs in the Career Center. And again, we're using scaled reporting to move the data. And we also pull our data out of Handshake to a data warehouse, which recombines our Handshake data back with student information system data again for our long-term archive. So with integrations, we've found one of the big benefits is, I don't know how it is for your team, but I'm at the University of Virginia, I oversee the creation and maintenance of all the Handshake accounts, and the ability to direct some of these external constituents who don't need a full Handshake account to these other tools really lowers overhead on the number of accounts that we're provisioning within Handshake. I see that as a great bet. Could you actually go to the next slide? So with this, there's kind of some lessons learned I want to pass on. And this, I think, with the differences that exist in between each institution, I wanted to keep this as generic as possible. Hopefully it'll be of some use. But the biggest lesson learned was to avoid or mitigate some of those time-sensitive integrations. If you're looking to build a system that is instantly reflective of another system, a lot of times there really isn't. There are ways to do it, but I would caution against that, just because of the built-ins and a lot of the outbound data flows from Handshake. Make your integration as simple as possible. One of the things I was looking to avoid was I wanted to avoid having to bounce my data out to a intermediary server, but found that wasn't possible. So I actually took a lot of time to come to that decision whether or not to employ a server in the middle that would receive reports and then pass them on to another system. The other lesson is make sure you document your process and update changes as you make them, so that way you have a record of what's actually occurring in these data flows. And then last of all, keep up to date with product announcements for both integrated products, because you'll see over time, Handshake will make an update to a field, Salesforce will add a new capability, and all of a sudden your integration breaks. So you got to make sure you have your finger on the pulse of both products so you can anticipate changes. But yeah, that's really all that I have, and I'll turn this back over to Britt. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Nathan. We really appreciate that, and you bring the expertise. There were a couple of questions in the chat that I wanted to address while what you spoke about was really fresh. People asked, what is an API and what is BI? I feel like you could do a better job of explaining those two things in layman's terms than I can. You probably know what API stands for while I have to Google it. Can you give us a quick rundown on how you understand those to, exist in the world?
Yeah, an API is a automatic integration, I think is the acronym. What it is an automatic data flow between two products. So, for example, let's say someone at Carnegie Mellon writes one of those notes into their employer record, and then if they're integrating with an out product through an API, when that update is made, it is then sent through the API process and pushed over to the other product. Most schools that I know, I won't say most, but a fair amount of us upload data to Handshake through the importer, which is through a flat file. In other words, we take all these records, combine them into one file, and send that one file once a day or whatever. An API, when it's engineered properly, is sending each record as it changes. We found some problems with the API that we had between Handshake and Salesforce, which was adding a delay, which is why we moved away from it. But it is a very valid process, and a lot of products have great success. Just didn't work out for our particular use case. BI is your business intelligence tool. Microsoft Power BI does data visualizations. Tableau is another BI tool. We use one called Click. It's kind of particular to higher ed. But what these tools do is they take live data feeds and turn them into interactive data visualizations to say, for example, you have a chart that shows you your amount of applications submitted into Handshake week over week, and you want to filter it down to see just your third year students, how many applications they did. You click one button and your visualization then adapts to only show that selected population. So it takes your data from being static charts to being a interactive representation that you can filter to subsection of your population.
Excellent. I really appreciate you going into that. I think that was helpful for everybody on the line as well, especially calling out a couple of BI platforms too. I think that'll really help people who are looking to get a start on this front. Excellent. Okay, we'll have more time to talk to Sean and Nathan later, but now I want to talk for a little bit. I actually want to poll you all. So let me get this running. Here it is. So the question this time around is, if your team uses an external CRM, are you interested in using scheduled reports to integrate data from Handshake? So I know that only about, it was like 22% of folks answered the initial question and said they have an external CRM. So if you don't use one, you don't have to answer this question unless you feel you might adopt one and you would be interested in doing it. But yeah, just want to get a sense for what people think about this. And as Nathan called out, you know, Handshake's API has existed for a while. Scheduled reports were implemented in part to help you share insights out via email with other stakeholders, but also as a way for you to, kind of another avenue for you to get data out of Handshake and into a third-party system like a CRM or like a BI. So yeah, we just wanted to get a sense for how people feel about that. So thanks to everyone who's voted. And again, if you don't use a CRM, don't think you'll ever use an external CRM, you don't have to answer this question. I'll close the poll in 5 seconds, and then I'll show you the answers. Okay, here we go. So of the folks who are using an external CRM, it looks like people are interested. So that's really good to hear. I hope Nathan's presentation was helpful. And absolutely feel free to get in touch with your relationship manager and our support team to talk about that. We'll be happy to guide you on how you can set up scheduled reports to share data with external systems. Excellent. So as I mentioned at the top of the webinar, I want to do just a quick section on a couple of product updates that have either launched recently or are launching soon that can help you supercharge your employer relations efforts. So first up is scheduled reports and dashboards, which we were just talking about. So again, Nathan referenced this heavily in his case study, but to recap, you can use this feature to send reports or dashboards in Handshake to an email address or an SFTP or S3 endpoint on a regular cadence. So scheduled reports and dashboards are a great way to keep your leadership team abreast of key metrics. So for example, if you have a vital report or dashboard that you want to share with your director on a weekly basis, you could go into their Handshake account and set up a scheduled report or dashboard to show up in their inbox every week. And then you can also use scheduled reports to update external systems with data from Handshake. So if your institution uses tools like Salesforce or Power BI or Click or Tableau, we highly recommend you consider setting up an integration using scheduled reports. And I have a really handy help article that I'm going to drop in the chat right now that you can check out. It'll also be in my follow-up email. But this is our help article on using scheduled reports. All right. Next up is Alumni Hub, which we are currently in beta with, and we're going to launch to everyone later this summer. If we have any folks who are in the beta today, in the beta right now and are on the webinar today, thank you so much for helping us test this product. We hope you love it. And we're excited to iterate on the feedback that you all have been sharing with us. It's been really great so far. But for those who aren't familiar with it, the Alumni Hub is all about leveraging your alumni network to unlock opportunities that are really unique to your students. And in this initial phase, Alumni Hub aggregates employer contacts that listed your institution as their alma mater. So you have a really quick and easy view of people who are recruiting on Handshake that went to your school. So that means that you can use Alumni Hub to identify contacts at employers that you haven't approved yet. So potentially a new employer relationship you want to foster because you know you have a special connection to someone there. You can also use Alumni Hub to monitor which alumni are the most active on Handshake and within your own programming. So the hub allows you to filter by the people that were most recently active in Handshake, and you can also see if they attended a career fair or hosted an event with you as well. And then finally, you can also use Alumni Hub to send one-on-one messages to the alumni listed there so that you can nurture relationships over time. So you could use this to invite them to co-host an event with you, reach out and talk about particular opportunities for your students, really endless opportunities there. But you can, again, send messages directly from Alumni Hub as well. And I wanted to call out that future iterations of Alumni Hub, so this is just the first version, we'll continue to iterate on it and add more features. In the future, we want to incorporate non-employer alumni. So people who don't have an employer an employer account in Handshake, they are just students that graduated from your school and are now working. So when we incorporate these alums, you'll be able to even more holistically manage relationships with key alumni and connect them with your students. So look for alums who have a unique type of experience and offer to connect them with your students who are looking for advice or for a quick informational interview. And I've got another help article on Alumni Hub that I will drop in the chat. And again, this is in beta right now. But we will launch to all schools later this summer. All right, next up. This summer, we are also launching 3 new dashboards to help your team monitor engagement trends and share your successes with leadership and other campus partners. So there are, like I said, 3 of them. They focus on student equity, virtual engagement, and employer relations. The student equity one will help you identify how students are engaging on Handshake across gender, race, and ethnicity so that you can identify gaps and adapt your strategy to drive more equitable outcomes. And so these dashboards haven't launched yet, but if you're interested in digging into equity information right now, we recently launched a set of new DE&I report templates that can help you dig deeper into the insights that we will share in this dashboard. So if you want to learn about the DE&I report templates, I wrote a blog post about them, and it also links off to all of the reports, so you can check them out here. Cool. So that's student equity. The virtual engagement dashboard will help your team track how your team facilitates student-employer connections across virtual career events and help you benchmark those events against in-person events, so that you can better understand how virtual should be established as a channel in your long-term strategy. And then finally, the last dashboard, especially important for this group, is focused specifically on employer relations. So it's all about helping you identify student interest trends and map them to the types of employers that you have in your network or that you could have in your network, but you haven't connected with them yet. So really about identifying new opportunities to expand your network. More information to come on dashboards next month. All right, last but certainly not least, I wanted to give you a sneak preview into a new type of virtual interaction that we're launching later this summer. It's called virtual info chats. So virtual info chats were born out of students' desire to connect with employers earlier on in the recruiting process in a more informal, less intimidating setting to get an inside look at company culture and available opportunities. And it'll also give employers the ability to personalize their approach to recruiting and make a more lasting impression on potential applicants. So essentially what it is the ability for employers to set availability for 15-minute conversations hosted virtually on Handshake. And importantly, this will be available for all employers, paying and non-paying, and they'll be able to offer availability to meet for a virtual info chat via messages they send to students, which you can see in the mock-up on the slide here. And later this year, they'll also be able to feature availability to meet within job postings themselves. And of course, on top of all of this, we will share data with our school partners about how your students are connecting with employers via this new type of connection. This is something that employers were starting to offer outside of Handshake already. So bringing it onto our platform ensures that it happens within the context of all of the other pieces of data, resources, and guidance that live within Handshake. And it also means that we can, for the first time, report on this to you. So you can expect to see this data incorporated into analytics this fall. which is super exciting. More information to come on virtual info chats over the summer. And with that, we're done with our content, but we have a lovely 15 minutes to do some Q&A with our fabulous panelists. So Sean and Nathan, thank you again so much for offering up your time and expertise today. I know the chat was blowing up with thank yous and also some really great questions for you, so excited to run through things. I did want to call out before I jump in, Sean, you mentioned the employer activity snapshot. A bunch of people went in and started clicking on that link, and it's broken right now. And that is because of a third-party tool that Handshake uses going down. So hopefully they'll be up later today, and people will be able to take advantage of that really excellent resource. But rotten timing there, and sorry to everybody who wasn't able to access it. I know that it's Snowflake is the name of the provider, and they're working hard to get things back up and running. But let's go ahead, and Sam, I want to invite you back in too, because I know you've been looking through the chat and you have a lot of expertise on this front. But let's dive into some questions, yeah?
Yeah, I'd love that for sure.
Awesome. Okay, so Sean, first one for you. You mentioned giving access to Handshake to people in advancement and other faculty. What types of restrictions do you set on accounts for external users?
So, that's one of the questions I want to clarify. So if there is an advancement professional that, is working with employers and doing a little bit more on the development side, I know there's a few advancement folks in ours, they will get a staff account and they'll have the ability, there's a view shared notes permission that you can add to that. Now, most faculty and staff in the university will just get a complimentary faculty staff account, which is they could see the same as a student. But for folks, we have specific programs that do employer relations or career services. Maybe they have one person dedicated, or like I said, we have a Hines College that also uses Handshake as well. They will have the ability to view shared notes. I will say many of our advancement folks, they use Salesforce for their own client management. A lot of the time, this would just be the ability to be able to see what's going on. So the advancement folks aren't really putting much in there. This would just be for that ability, if they do have that account, to be able to see what's going on, who we're meeting with. But again, we would be the ones kind of working with them to say, hey, this is what we're doing. And we work, my supervisor works very closely with the advancement team. But it's just a great way to just keep everything organized within Handshake. So yes, most faculty and staff will just get that complimentary use.
Excellent. Awesome. Nathan, let's jump over to you. So we had a question, how frequently do you sync information between Handshake and Salesforce and using the API versus scheduled reporting? I think you mentioned it with the API, those changes, if you use an API, are pushed automatically as they happen. Is that correct?
We were finding that our method of querying the API was still taking 24 to 48 hours for it to show because of API journaling, which is why we decided to move the time-sensitive process out of Salesforce into a different solution. So what we're doing is we're sending a nightly file through FTP that gets picked up on my server, and then the administrators on Salesforce know to go into my server and grab it every 24 hours.
Excellent. And that actually asked another question, which was if you were using SFTP, which
yes.
You just answered. Excellent. All right, Sam, you got a favorite question in there? We've got a lot of them, so we're going to get through as many as we can.
Sure. Quick question for Sean. Do you, when you're assigning your Career Center staff members to employers in the system, do you assign them just to the employer, just to the contact, or do you kind of do a little bit of a mix of both, that you have a lead for your employer, but then different connections by contact? What does it look like?
Yeah, so like my process is pretty, let's say I'm meeting with an employer, I'll take my notes, I'll put my notes in the notes section. And then once I know who the person or point of contact, because it is tough to figure out who is our point of contact. Do you look at the person that posts the most jobs? Is it the person that you're connecting with first? Many times that's where that personal connection really does show you who the person will be. So once I really know that, in the beginning, I might just put the person that's putting the job, let's say if we're connecting through email. And then once I finalize, okay, it's, Bill Lee from this company, I'm going to sign my name to that contact. because that can change. Like I said, there's been multiple times where I've changed the contact like 4 times in 2 weeks just because we're trying to figure out who the direct person is. But I always do it to the contact. So I'll go into the employer, put the notes there, and then I'll assign the contact in the assigning tool. And then again, I'll also put a label on them as a meeting. So I'll put employer relations meeting 2021. That way I can filter it, whether I want to filter it by contacts, I can filter it by employers. It just makes it easier for me.
Awesome. And then secondary question, do you ever have this happen where you're meeting with contacts, but they don't actually have a Handshake profile? And if so, what's your process look like there?
Yeah, it's tough. So what I do kind of as like a filler is I'll put in the notes section the point of contact. So I'll say met with Bill Lee. They don't have a Handshake account. They will be putting a Handshake in account shortly. And obviously, when you put the notes in, it gives you a timestamp so you know when it is. You don't have to put the date and time if you're doing it in real time. So that's kind of what I will do as a filler, and I'll try to connect with that employer, but like, hey, have you created your account? Once that's done, there's sometimes also where they're in the staff, but not in the contacts. So sometimes I'll go in and create contact for users so that they're in our Carnegie Mellon contact list. So that helps a lot too. If let's say they're not as a CMU contact yet, that'll make them the CMU contact, which is really helping. And the one thing that's also nice, if I've met with those people, individually, on a phone or Zoom, I can also download a report once I filter, get their emails. And if I want to send a personal email, I don't have to worry about going to an Excel doc. I can just grab the emails from there as well. If you want to personally email, which I always recommend if it's a few employers, just so it has that personal touch.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks so much, Sean, for sharing that. I'm trying to look through here. Britt, I don't know if you have any that are.
Yeah, I've got one for Nathan. So Brian asked, does your Salesforce integration with Handshake extend beyond just reporting employer engagement activity like jobs, interviews, and fairs? Does it include notes about employers?
We're working toward that. Right now, we wanted to start with just sharing mainly what each organization is doing, who they're talking to. We're working on figuring a strategy to share notes, because it's not just the notes coming from Handshake. We have to coordinate with advancement and with the Alumni Association to agree on the structure of notes and how they are going to get reported into the Salesforce instance, because each product does it a little differently. So we're just coordinating on that.
Makes total sense. Awesome.
All right, Sean, I have another question for you. I like this, Britt, that you're focusing on the Nathan questions,
Yeah.
making it easier. So Sean, there's a question about, how you kind of started this process. So did you go through all of your historic employers when you when you decided to do this? Did you go through and assign all of your contacts? Or did you really just say, okay, as of January 31st, moving forward, we're going to start doing that. This is our process.
Yeah, so I think for all of you that are thinking about, I need projects for student workers or maybe you just need some administration time. Yeah, so I tried to do, I was putting all my notes in an Excel document that we had a shared drive. And then I also was, it's easiest to always keep it in my OneNote. I almost have like a OneNote for every employer. So that's kind of how it started. I started to go back from the past year and kind of backlog, which is tough for the timestamp ability because, it stamps right when you enter. So on those ones, I had to put like, this meeting was on blank date. So I went back and kind of put it in for the year. But again, I'd love to have a plan once we get some student workers in the fall to maybe go back even farther and just put some of those notes that are in there. But yeah, it's it would have been easiest just to start where we do, but I did have a lot of notes, and I know my colleague, my supervisor, he also had a lot of notes, and we're in the process of trying to get it all in there. But the good thing is we also will look through, I make folders in my mail. So we'll just go through and figure out who's the most recent contact from each employer for the assigning portion. So that really does help. But again, there's times, especially in the recruiting world, people change jobs very frequently. So there's some employers that we've changed the point of contact every couple months to a year. It just happens.
Cool. All right, Nathan, one for you. This is from Ben. How do you structure career services staff access to Salesforce? We're exploring this right now and thinking of having key leads with access rather than all staff. Just curious how you manage this and what roles staff like counselors have in contributing to the CRM. Great question.
Yeah, well, there's a distinction in our office. Right now, we've got our employer relations folks. In employer relations, we have director of employer relations, our associate director, and then account managers who have licenses for Salesforce. We have not licensed our career counseling staff over for Salesforce right now. So what they typically do, if they have a event or whatnot they're planning, they coordinate with our employer relations folks who have Salesforce access.
I'm also getting lots of questions about virtual info chats. I'm glad to see folks are excited. The video experience, so it is a virtual video connection between a student and employer. It is going to look suspiciously like a virtual fair one-on-one session, wink, wink. That video interface is going to be used in virtual fairs, virtual info chats, and virtual appointments. So you can expect the experience to be very similar. And I also just saw a question come in, will schools be able to facilitate virtual info chats between students and employers? So in this initial iteration, it's going to be on the employers to set up their availability and then offer to students either through a message or eventually within a job posting itself. And again, we'll give you reporting on when those connections are facilitated. But because this is just very, very, very similar to how a virtual fair works, the context is just a little bit different. You could set up a small virtual fair that would accomplish the exact same thing, and that would allow you to kind of like facilitate the event. So that's how I would recommend doing that. It's a really good question.
John, I have a question for you. When you are doing your employer notes, do you have a standardization set for how you're keeping those, or like coding that you use so that it's easy for you to report or filter on specific notes through the analytics tool?
You know, I'd love to tell you that I had this great plan and formatting and I would say when I'm in my employer meetings and I usually keep my OneNote up, I'm just, bulleting, or I'm using like just each different, like I'll say, employer talked about robotics club, wants to do more participation in this. They're looking to hire seniors in ECE, or I kind of try to like hit the top points, and then I always at the end try to keep like next steps. So that way, and then I'll usually put like a done parentheses if I can go back and edit, because you can go back and edit your notes, which is nice. So you can do that. The other thing that is also nice in the notes feature is you can also share a personal note. So if you don't want others to see your notes and you want something more dedicated to that employer for you, you can just put a personal note and it'll only be seen by you as well. But no, I don't have any specific coding. I kind of just put in the information I feel is most important to whoever, related to recruiting or career services as possible.
We've got 1 more minute, so I've got one last one for you, Nathan. Oh, and you're already answering it. Do you want to answer it live? Do you import any information from Salesforce back into Handshake?
We actually do not. It's outbound only at this point, and then we are coordinating with alumni and with advancement over there in the Salesforce CRM.
Yeah, important to note that scheduled reports are a one-way street. That feature specifically is about pushing data out of Handshake and into another platform. So it's a good question. Awesome. All right. Well, we are right at time. So let me say again, Nathan, Sean, Sam, appreciate you all. You're all amazing, amazing, amazing people. And just so grateful for your insights and guidance. I think everybody on the call was really excited. Janet says, thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your time. Again, recording coming your way tomorrow, along with some of the resources that we shared today. And hope you found it helpful. Hang around. There's going to be a quick 2-question survey pop up when I end the webinar. But thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks, y'all. Bye-bye.